Welcome, everybody, to our 24th edition of Native Paranormal Crossroads. My name is Laura Massey from Two Feathers Medicine, and I welcome once again the wonderful paranormal rangers, Michelle Miners, Stan Milford, and John. Hi, how are you guys?
I'm
Oh,
doing well.
Good.
we're doing good.
Good, good. So we are continuing our Bigfoot month, and it's created a lot of interest looking at the chat that we've had and looking at the comments on the previous shows. People love this topic of Bigfoot or Sasquatch. My first question actually is, how did we get the name Sasquatch? Where did that come from?
John or Michelle might know that. I don't.
I believe the
Pass
term
the buck.
the term Sasquatch comes from the Pacific Northwest,
Right. Native
and in
American.
that area, that's what the native tribes called it. Um, so there, and there's other names. There's skunk ape. There's uh, you know,
Yowie,
yowie. There are
Australia,
all different kinds of names
Yeti.
for it.
Yeti,
Yeah, abominable
skunk ape.
snowman, and
Oh,
whatever.
okay.
Yeah,
So it depends
Um,
yeah.
what part of the globe you're on,
but
Right.
in the world
but
you
what
are.
I find interesting there is that it is a worldwide phenomenon, and
It's
it
not a
seems
new phenomenon.
yeah, it seems like all through history there's been some contact with Bigfoot, and we just use the that term because everybody understands it. When we went to Toronto, they have a different name for it too. Um, and I don't remember it offhand, but they actually consider it part of their clan within their tribe. So there's that family significance there. Um, and then across the United States, across the world, you have different types. I would say, um, our
Variations of it.
ours tend to be about 7, 8 foot tall, with usually pretty skinny, what I consider scrawny, um, different colored patterns of hair, from brown and reddish to black, and even with streaks on them. And boy, there's just so much. But some are very aggressive. Some are like in Toronto area, they're very gentle, and they don't go out and hurt people or scare people. So you have all types.
Just like people, really. Come in
Right.
all sort of shape, sizes, temperaments.
True.
Yeah,
They have
as long
variations.
as they're not here to spread religion and
Yes, that's
don't
right.
strip all our resources, I think we're okay.
I don't think they're going to come and knock at your door.
Yeah, not like 1492, right?
Right. Right.
I should just say at this point, unfortunately, Tom Simes can't be with us tonight, but maybe we can get him on another time, Michelle.
Yeah, he was taken ill today, so he let us know that, and I wish him that he gets better with his whatever he's dealing with today.
Yeah,
Oh
we
yeah.
wish you well, Tom. But I
We
said,
wish
I
you well.
think with the paranormal rangers here and all their years of experience, we have plenty to talk about
Absolutely, as
related,
always.
yeah, related to Sasquatch.
Well, I want to say that I am so glad that Stan is able to come back so us three could be on together once again. He's been very busy promoting his new book, and so he's been doing lots of work with that in the moment.
So
Yes.
how's
Yeah.
that going, Sam? Do you want to update us a bit on that? Where have you
Um,
been?
it'll be released October 1st. I just finished up doing the recording for the ebook or audio. Um, I had, things that I went in and read, and that went really well in the studio. It was a new experience, interesting experience, um, but a pleasant one. And I still have to go back to the studio to do what they call some pickups, where you're doing some maybe some corrective things or adding things or stuff of that nature. But uh, that'll be coming up, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. John and both Michelle have really been a big help in promoting this thing. We've been traveling like what was mentioned earlier to Toronto and other places, and disseminating a lot of the promotional materials. So, yeah, I'm really blessed to have them on my side with this thing. We're excited about it because I think the book itself will translate to a lot more activity for all three of us.
Mm-hmm.
The Paranormal Rangers, plural. Um, I think there's a lot of things coming in the future. There's television stuff that's on the foreseeable future, and yeah, it's an exciting time. I've really been blessed.
And I think it's also important to note that how you three approach what you do, which probably comes forward in the book with your experience in law enforcement, your sort of scientific investigation, because there is so much out there these days on the internet, people making claims about this, that, and the other in the paranormal. And I think, from my point of view, it sets you three sort of aside because you are very thorough in what you do. I mean, you've had loads of experience between all three of you. You also have the native connection, don't you? The Navajo connection. You've worked a lot in these places on the reservations where much of this has taken place. And I think you're very, from what I understand from talking to you over the last year or so, you're very thorough in your investigations. So I think it's good for people to know, one, your background. That's why the book will be great for people to read, because they'll understand where you're coming from with your investigations and your presentations and what you put forward to us tonight, your experiences, your beliefs. And sometimes they can vary because there's many, many opinions out there. But yours is based on years of experience and expertise in this field.
Well,
Yeah.
John and I, go ahead, John.
One of the things that we often talk about, and we'll bring this up as a point, is that people ask us all the time, "Do you believe in this? Do you believe in that? Do you believe in Bigfoot?" And we don't use the term believe. Um, we have investigated enough that there is no doubt in our mind that these things are out there, along with UFOs and hauntings and you know even the skinwalker phenomenon. Uh, they're they're all there and they're real, and some of them can kill you. And so, in that respect, there's not a belief system involved. Now, when you get to Native American tribes, what gets really amazing is that most Native American tribes have had contacts like this all through their their existence, and so they don't bat an eye. It's already baked into the culture that these things are there, they exist, and that's just the way it is. It's the way it's always been, and so it has nothing to do with belief. Um, and we've seen it so many times. We've had friends of ours that they have an experience and they go crazy. oh, I saw an orb, I saw this, I saw that, I saw a UFO. And they're emotional, they're excited, they're just beside themselves with this experience. And we try to explain to them, we saw this stuff all the time. And to us, it really, at some point, you just lose that, um, you lose that excitement about it. Not to say it's not exciting, but you start critically analyzing what you're seeing, and you start looking at it and saying, could it be an artifact? Could it be something else? Could it be an airplane? You whip out your phone and you look at Flight Radar 24. Are there any planes, any unmarked planes, like military, that aren't transponding, but they're still showing them? Is it a satellite? Is it the space station coming up in the early evening, and it's the sun is reflecting off of it, and it looks large? Um, is it a shooting star, or a fireball, or something else? Um, so you start eliminating things, and pretty soon you're left with what remains, which is essentially evidence. And so we have to vet everything that we see, everything that we do. And sometimes, I'd love to just sit there and look at stuff and go, ooh, um, but I'll look at it and go, okay, are there any other terrestrial explanations for this? And I start ticking off all the boxes. So, in that respect, it's not that much fun, but it happens, and we've seen it all our careers, all our lives. Um, it's just a fact.
So would it
I
be
think
fair
there's
to
one.
say, go on, Stan, go on.
I was just going to say, I think there's one. There's an element that needs to be taken into consideration in the fact that many indigenous cultures have a similar view. Like with the Navajo, there's a term that's called hojo, and that means having that harmony, balance, and peace in all respects of your life. And so, like things like the phenomenon of Bigfoot, John had mentioned the northern tribes we just visited, or First Nations people up in Toronto, Canada, and their view and approach to this thing that people refer to as Bigfoot. And so, whether it's a Bigfoot or a hauntings or uh, different types of what would be termed paranormal phenomena, the three of us as investigators, we go into this with an open and clear mind in the approach. We're not going into a situation already thinking, oh, I know what's going on in this situation. I already have the answer. That's not the case. You go into it a blank sheet of paper, and you're there to gather information and collect information, and let that information that you collect speak for itself. You know, um, you try to be as clear and objective uh, in the work that you do, so that we're only human, and yeah, at times we make mistakes. You do. Sometimes you have to go back and recreate certain experiments and things of that to be more clear in your approach. So, but John and I have that law enforcement investigation background. Michelle has as uh, uh, I guess investigative journalist would
Mm-hmm. Background. Yeah.
background. So uh, in the way we approach this, it's not you know in the investigation we do, it's not done from an entertainment standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
It's not done, like John has said, jumping and running and screaming about these kind of things. And, it's done with a very, very seriously. So,
Well, you know what you're saying there, Stan, is well, you know, there is a set of protocols that are followed. But when I was growing up, my great grandfather would sit around a big drum, and I remember at 5 years old sharing stories of the Pawnee and the war um, hunts that they used to go on, and also the scouting programs, and sharing that oral history. So for me, in an investigative mode, it's listening to other people's stories and then finding what the facts are about that story. And, you know, some things can be embellished. People like to embellish their stories sometimes,
Oh, they do.
you know,
It's human
and
nature.
it's human nature to tell a story and make it more exciting than it was. In the case of the Sasquatch, I interviewed a guy up in the Uinta Basin, and he used tactics and little wood blocks and called them in, and I did see it with my natural eye, and it was caught on camera. And it was generally, my investigations have been done with other people, and we've had eyewitnesses. Even that doesn't clarify that that thing was real. You know, people still are going to be speculatory about that as well, even though you've captured certain things. And
True.
so it's just a story, you know, that we have to look at. Even in our political climate, we're hearing stories right now, but we don't know what the background and the facts are. We just hear that certain things happened, and it's affecting the nation, but we don't know what's really going on in the background with our former president, for example. You know, he might be, we're all speculatory, he has health problems, he decided he can't handle the office in the way he once did. So we can make up a lot of and conjecture a lot of things. And we do this in the world of ufology, and even with the stories, we can embellish somebody else's stories as well. And so we have to be very factual about what we're hearing. And that's where it gets very dicey sometimes if we don't have all the facts. And so having the paranormal rangers, having the law enforcement background they have, there is a set of protocols that they have learned through their investigations as well.
Yes, I get the feeling you're not here to prove or disprove anything. You're going through, as you say, a set of protocols which bring forward the information, and a set maybe of common denominators between the stories and the information you get. And I guess after a while you see a pattern as well. You know, with your
Exactly.
experience, there's going to be patterns that come forward that you
Exactly.
can piece things together. But just because someone else has a photo of Bigfoot up on their webpage or whatever doesn't mean to say that is endorsed by you because you have done Bigfoot investigations. You're going to tell us about your experiences with Bigfoot.
John
Exactly.
and I and Michelle, you know, we we hear all too often and have for the last decade this term uh, disclosure by the U.S.
Mhm.
government. The thing is, for John and I and Michelle, you know, in the investigations and study that we've done with various phenomena over the years, we aren't dependent on the government and other sources to disclose this information to us to have that validation, you know, or proof that this stuff exists. For the three of us, we know that it exists. We have throughout our lives had experiences and again investigations that the evidence shows very clearly that these phenomena do exist in many situations. And so we're not out there desperately searching to try to prove to ourselves that this stuff happens. We know it happens.
Mhm.
So that's. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Absolutely. You're comfortable with your own evidence, what you've seen, and that's how people should be if they're researching stuff like this themselves. If you know, if they're going out there and doing research and so on, and they've seen something and have experience of something, it's their own intuition, isn't it, that's going to be a belief for them, if you want to use that word. I know it's not a word that you use. Or a knowingness. You have a
I like
knowingness about these
to
things, don't you?
I like to say that really you would be hard pressed to find a single family throughout the world, whether it's here in the States or Scotland or Australia, Africa, a single family that doesn't have some family member that has not experienced some type of paranormal phenomena, whether
Exactly.
it's a spirit of a haunting or UFOs or extraterrestrial or witchcraft. You know, um, in talking with my older sister Deborah, we firmly have the feeling that mankind and humanity really has inherited a very, they use the term paranormal, but in reality it's very normal.
Mm.
It's these phenomenon have existed, I think, in many things long before man ever set foot upon the earth. Things like the extraterrestrial and the UFO phenomenon, it may have existed long before man existed here on earth. So,
Well,
anyway.
it's from a scientific point of view, it was really interesting. We studied ley lines, and those ley lines have certain energy electromagnetic fields that run throughout the Earth's pattern, in our Earth's, you know, hemisphere. What's really interesting, once in a while you'll get an anomalous behavior that occurs with these electromagnetic fields, and it can produce hallucinations and other physical, psychological, even emotional responses. And so, from a scientific view, how do you calculate that when nature in itself is doing things? So that could be some of the phenomena as well that's tied into it. So we mystify those things and objectify them as being this and that. We give them language, and again, it becomes what I said, the spiritual woo-woo, as I've explained before, is just the spiritual. And it's our reaction to our experiences, whether it's a religious experience, whether it's something we were taught by our own parenting and then our environment we grew in. Sometimes we can mislabel that as humans. That's just because we have to have an understanding, what is this I'm experiencing? Because when I went up to the Uinta Basin I wasn't seeking for a UFO experience or paranormal experience. I did have, gifts of where I could see things of the spirit, but I always calculated that as being a religious experience. And so when I started to have this phenomena experience of seeing things beyond what I've ever seen, um, with seeing paranormal or UFOs or even entities, I it took me a while to realize what I was seeing. And so I think this is the thing we have to get accurate is, what is it I'm dealing with? Am I being influenced by, did I drink? Did I take drugs? You've got to look at all that criteria, and it's,
Right.
and you can't judge it. You just got to look at all of the evidence and say, okay, what is this? And even from a
Yeah.
military standpoint, what you were saying, Stan.
You have naturally occurring things like radon,
Mhm.
a radioactive element that in
Mhm.
some areas of the world, certain specific locations, it will uh, it will cause people's homes, businesses. It'll be affected by that, and I've seen some situations where people are reporting very extreme paranormal activity at a location, and it turns out there's a correlation with the radon that's occurring in that building.
Right.
And so John and I and Michelle, having come from the Navajo reservation, you have radiation pits, uranium radiation pits,
Yeah.
the yellow cake throughout the whole region. And I'll let those guys kind of comment on that subject.
Well, there's a lot going on um, environmentally, no matter where you go. And the one thing we didn't mention, we always talk about scientific examination. And I think we kind of cut ourselves off at the knees because we're all about the science. Let's
Mm-hmm.
go
Right,
shoot a rocket at it. You know,
right,
um, it's got to be scientific. And yet, with all of this, there's a spiritual component
Mm-hmm.
that's really lacking in the scientific community, and that's not even addressed because now, as Michelle says, this gets into the woo-woo situation, and with the scientists, you don't want to do that. So there's a disconnect, I guess, is what I'm saying, and I think that that spiritual side needs to be looked at, and it can create a whole different aspect of the scientific examination. We just don't understand it, and so because we don't understand, it doesn't exist or shouldn't be looked at. And we see this over and over, even within the scientific community. I've worked with numerous archaeologists, and an archaeologist will go to school, get his degree or her degree, and they're taught by a teacher. This is what you can expect. This is what we've seen. Um, and they go out in the field, and when they write a an excavation proposal, they will actually put in this sentence. They will say, "We expect to find," and so their mind is already made up as to what they're expecting to see,
right.
and it blocks off any other avenues of inquiry.
Right.
Now, my background is a law enforcement officer. I did technical accident investigation and some reconstruction. And when you look at facts,
Mm-hmm.
you only look at the facts first, then you get your witness statements. But if the witness statements don't match up to the evidence on the roadway, you you can put them down, but you can't really use them. And
Hey, John, can I add something real quick on that? One thing is that with your witness statements, you may have 10 people that seen the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yet each of those 10 people will have their own version and coloration of the same thing that occurred. And
Absolutely.
sometimes as an investigator, you're going like, oh my God, what's going on here? How is this person seeing it from that perspective? But yeah, it's again, it's part of human nature.
yeah, so so when you do those type of investigations, it's all evidence based.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm saying is that there's a whole spiritual side, and I'm not saying religion. I'm saying something within each one of us that we have that is there. Sometimes you get a sixth sense. You feel something's not right, and
Right.
so you don't do something because of that. Some of us say, "Oh, that's my guardian angel." We have all kinds of different terms for these things, but they're real. And just like a muscle, if you exercise them, they will start getting stronger, and you can start utilizing them. And this is what healers do. They exercise this, and they're able to bring it to a greater experience and actually heal people. Um, I've been at a ceremonial dance where a woman with stage 4 cancer asked to dance, be put behind the staffs and had a song sung for her. And she says that the doctors just gave her months to live.
Mm-hmm.
The next year she came back and she thanked everybody. And, it's been a year later. And she told us that after that dance, she went back to the hospital. They could not find any cancer in her.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctors were calling this network of doctors and telling them, get over here. You need to see this. You need to do, we need to do another MRI, another x ray, because this cancer is gone and we have no explanation. And she came back and she just said, hey, it worked. Thank you. So, things like that, you see them and you say, oh, that's a miracle. Or was it something that she believed in so strongly that it
Mm-hmm.
actually affected? But how do you kill cancer cells, especially when they've metastasized to the point where it's invaded so much of your body that the doctors say, we can't do anything for you. And so now
I
there's no
too,
hope. And all our families have stories like that,
right.
you know. So it's just really, there's something else out there, is what I'm saying. And
True.
when it comes to Bigfoot, there's a lot going on. Like I said, we think he's a dimensional creature, that
Mm-hmm.
he comes in, pops in through a different dimension, and he shows up. Uh, we've also seen a real strong correlation with UFO activity. When we've watched it over the years, and when we got more and more reports of Bigfoot, we got corresponding reports of UFO activity, or vice versa. If the UFO reports started coming in, and they would come in what UFO ufologists call flaps, like areas where all of a sudden you get these massive sightings that are occurring all over the place. And we would start hearing reports, more and more reports of Bigfoot on the ground. So we determined just from that there was a correlation between the two.
So,
And
is there a correlation between that and Earth energies, ley lines, as Michelle was alluding to earlier?
it could be that those areas are providing energy. Um, and we know that uh, Nikola Tesla said that if you had energy, if you had frequency, and you had vibration, he said you could do anything.
That's right.
And,
The
we're of the opinion that this energy, frequency, and vibration can actually be used, because ley lines are energy.
right.
If you have the frequency and vibration, which is basically hundreds of years of trial and error, you can open dimensional gates. And not only can you go in, but things can come out. And, that accounts for a lot. It accounts for natives everywhere, even in Toronto, that we talk to, that say that Bigfoot has actually disappeared in front of them, just vanished.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to people in the Pacific Northwest that said that they watched him behind a tree stump, just staring at them, and then they just slowly faded out. You've got Skinwalker Ranch, um, that found a carcass of what they think is a dire wolf. Dire wolves went extinct, thousands of years ago, and yet here they've got a fresh carcass of one. That they did an experiment and they compared the bones and everything else, and it was a 1-to-1 match with a dire wolf jawbone. So you have stuff like that that's going on. Um, and then we have, I'm going to switch directions a little bit. We have orbs. Now, what I've seen in the past is we started out with saucers, and we went to cigars and triangles and all different types of craft. And now there's, within the past years, there's a prevalence of orbs. And I'd like to think, myself, that this is just them coming up with new craft designs, or it could be whole different entities coming through a dimensional gate to visit us. But these orbs seem to be associated with Bigfoot. And uh, Stan, can you tell us about your recent experience having an orb flying around your tent?
Um, yeah. Recently, John and I worked with an individual, and we went out on this expedition out onto the Navajo reservation for several days. This involved camping, and during that time, uh, at night, one evening, sometime right around 10 o'clock, I was getting my things ready to go to bed in my tent, and on the outside of my tent was a there was an orb, very briefly, and then all of a sudden it was gone. And now, um, for me, one of the things is, I'm using this to represent an orb, but I think in all types of paranormal phenomenon, you're going to have a source of energy that's radiating from one single point. And, these can be vast, various sizes, from the size of a marble all the way up. Some people report them size of a basketball. Some people have seen them the size of a tractor trailer cab, a lot of different things, So, and I think that depending on what type of phenomenon you're dealing with, I think these sources of energy can manifest themselves for different purposes, and people are capable of seeing that orb with the naked eye, and or using some type of high tech equipment like night vision equipment or thermal equipment. Uh, it just depends on the situation, but I think there's a lot of different situations, and I think there like John had said, there is a correlation, between the orbs and what people have witnessed with the Bigfoot, and same with UFOs, and same with witchcraft and hauntings and a lot of different things. I think these sources of light can manifest, and we're able to. The human vision is very limited as far as the spectrum that we're able to see, and I would dare to suggest that a lot of times these things are present. They are around us, but we're not able to detect that they're there. And so anyway.
Yeah, I
I
think
was
that was my experience. Go on, Michelle.
I was going to share. It was really interesting. I had spoken with somebody who was an expert with orbs,
Mm,
and this was taken on Skinwalker Ranch when I was there years and years ago. And
wow.
it was really interesting. He said those are particles of dust on your camera.
Yeah.
And I already knew that, but we can misinterpret things.
Mm,
As you can see, there's a moon up there, and then all this was just dust. And because where it came from, it was assumed that we got all these orbs, and and he says, Michelle, I showed you guys to the audience a photo of, generally orbs are found this way because you can isolate the one. And so, and so in trying to prove scientifically orbs themselves and the correlation to sightings, They happen in sequence, and there's a pattern to when you vision or experience the phenomena. Usually a UFO will show up, or you'll have an orb experience, or you'll take a photo right after, and like Stan said, you don't even know you took a photo of that, and then it shows up. Like I was in the redwoods years ago, and I was standing by a huge redwood. I mean, that the spans of that tree was immense. And then right above me was an orb. It had a little face in there, and I was going to pull it out, but I can't seem to find it in the moment. It's things like that. That's a true orb, not the dust.
The thing to be careful of there is that, yes, in depending on the camera equipment you're using, there's so many different types of camera equipment out there
Right.
today that we have available. DSLRs, even the cell phone cameras today are quite high tech and capable of capturing different phenomena. But the thing I would like to say to be cautious about, you'll have the sciencey types that will look at something, and just like the image you showed,
Right.
sometimes they're too quick to to uh,
Judge.
to label that as, oh, that's only dust, and dismiss it. And yet when you go back and you're able to analyze those
Mm-hmm.
images, you can actually find images of faces and things of that nature, just like what you mentioned. I've had I've had some images that I've taken that actually, and it's not matrixing. It's not it's not you putting in your mind, oh, I'm putting a face in there. This looks like, eyes, nose, and a mouth, that kind of thing. It is an actual image of a human
Mm-hmm.
type face that's in these.
Right.
So as an investigator, you have to be very thorough in looking at the evidence from all angles, asking the who, what, why, when, why, and how of during your investigation. So,
Having said that, Stan, I'm going to show this again. I
mhm,
have another photo that showed like this area on the bottom was all red at one time. And it
yeah,
looked like there were things in that photo that looked like they were having this kind of war, like there were things in there, and it has morphed over time. And that's the other thing, digital photography, it can morph over time. Like the image can change. And I found that with a few I took on the ranch over time. And now I'm with this now. I'm stuck with that. But before it had orangey, reddish, things like they were having a little battle or something. And
I'm going to
then
talk about morphine real quick. I'm going to let John comment about a situation with a coin and how
okay.
the evidence was right there in front of us and how it changed. If you
Yeah.
would like to start
Yeah,
on that, John,
we
about
we talked about this the last episode, I think.
Yeah.
Um, that Stan had a coin drop on him in the middle of the night on his sleeping bag, and of course he's in the little tent by himself, and it makes a very
Mhm.
distinctive sound. And so he noticed it right away. He looked at it. It looked like a 1943 copper. Um, the and for those of you who don't know, at the 1943, all of the pennies were supposed to be made out of steel, and there were just a very small amount that they actually used copper planchets to to make these coins. So if you ever run into a wheat cent 1943, the way you test it is if it sticks to a magnet, it's steel. If it doesn't stick, it could be copper. Then you have to look at the weight in the how many grams it weighs. And if it's a true copper penny with the 1943 date, it's worth a tremendous amount of money. I mean, we're talking $50 to $100,000. And so Stan, the next morning, shows us all this coin. And we looked at it, and I looked at it. It's 1943 wheat cent, and it looks like it's copper. But we don't have a magnet to test it. So I says, well, hang on to it, and we'll take a look at it later. So he stuck it in his right pocket. And just to be clear, in law enforcement, we do not carry change in our pockets at all. Because if you're on a SWAT call and you've got a suspect in a house and you're tiptoeing around, you don't want something going jingle jingle in your pocket. So you strip. I mean, I don't carry any change in my pocket, even to this day. I have a container in my vehicle and I'll put the change in there, and that's where it stays. And every now and then, some youngster will say, "Hey, you got money." And I'll just take some out and give it to them. But the point that I'm making is that we do not carry change in it, and it's ingrained in us. We just don't do it. And so at the end of the day, I says, "Hey, you still got that coin?" He's, "Oh yeah, right here." And I said, "I got a magnet. The magnet that you use to your iPhone sticks on it." And he pulled the coin out, handed it to me, didn't even look at it, and it's a 1974 D,
It's crazy.
made in Denver. So it's a modern penny. And I says, "Hey, wait a minute, this is a 1974." And he says, "No, that can't be." And he stuck his hand out, turned his pocket inside out, everything else. That was the only coin in there. But we've had that happen before. And so we've seen it, and we just attribute it to a jokester spirit that's having fun with us, uh, because we keep entreating it and saying, "Dang it, send us a 1943 copper, that way we can get some money because we're broke." Believe it or not, we don't make any money doing this. We're we're lucky if we're hundred heirs. So,
You
and
do wonder if you'd have taken a digital photo of that. What
yeah, we
Yeah, that
original?
would be
should
interesting.
Yeah,
have. Uh,
but would the photo also morph? Because
right,
that's not
That
beyond
would
the
be interesting.
possibility, is it? It's,
right.
if you're open minded to all sorts of potentials, the photo could also morph.
But that's a good point. We need to start photographing things as soon as we have them in our hot little hands. Um,
For me, it has gotten to a point where it happens so often that used to
Right.
I would always have one of these cards that criminal investigators use that has the inch display on it, and I would carry actual Ziploc bags and date and time these things, and depending on the situation how these coins support or manifest, I will. But you know, uh, it happens quite often, and in one of the cases that when I was still working as ranger, a coin had apported or manifested, and I placed the coin in a sealed plastic cover, and with that particular coin, it changed uh, from a coin being like one of the state coins, like where you have the Texas state coin with a large star on it, to that of the, I believe it's Montana, a state coin that has the buffalo head on it, changing from one to the other. I see your point, yeah, and for the most part, these are photographed. Um, I don't think the one I don't think the one during the camping experience was photographed at the time, but yeah, it would be interesting to see if there's an actual change. And I don't, I don't, I wouldn't say, oh no, that's not possible for it to change. I've seen things that really it left me scratching my head, at the end, so.
Hey,
Yeah.
Laura, you submitted some photos, and I'd like to have you explain. So I'll put the first one up here, and you can tell us a little bit about the audience about this.
Yeah, sure. So this is just going back to orbs a moment. There's one here. Oh, you can't see my cursor. So it's to the right of the top of my head.
Mhm.
And when you expand it, well, it looks like an orb. Now, I take on board, I'm open minded about this. What you were saying about it could be flecks of dust. This was taken on a mobile phone, a cell phone. So, and the next couple of pictures are the same. But I could take another photo in the same room at a different time. There you are. There's another one above the cat and one next to my partner at the time. So whether you have your own interpretation here. Is it your guardian angel? Whatever. Spirit coming to see you. Is it an experience that was meant just for me? Nothing I could see with my naked eye. But when I went to the photo, I could see it. And again, above the DJ in this photo, which is very small, and unfortunately we can't expand it here, but there was nothing there. There was no hanging light. But when we went to look at the photo, there appears to be a massive orb with the shape of an angel on the inside above the DJ. And depending on
Ooh.
who you ask, you will get all sorts of views, again, like that's their guardian angel and so on. And you could also have, as I'm sure there was at that time, because it was my son's wedding, you could have many people taking the same photo from the same angle and not having an orb there. So you say, okay, is it dust on my lens? I'm open to all sorts of ideas about this, or was it an experience meant for me at my particular time of, this is getting spiritual here, but the particular time of my spiritual growth, when I wanted to see orbs, I wondered what orbs were, and I was getting them on all my photos at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
now, probably if I went out to try and take orbs, I probably wouldn't see them, because it's not that I've worked through that. I very much believe that there are spirits that come to us in all different forms. That's my personal belief. And maybe
Right.
that's what I needed to see at the time. Maybe that's what my my connection on the other side felt I needed at the time as part of my spiritual journey, and now I don't get them anymore. And if it is dust, why doesn't it appear on other photos? So it is an interesting one. I'm really open about that. I happen to believe, like you three and like a lot of people, or I have a knowingness that there is far more here than we understand. And that excites me a great deal, which is why I love doing these shows with you. It's exciting, I know, for you guys now, because you've been, as you were saying, it's not quite so incredulous as it was maybe in the beginning, and certainly to somebody like me, coming along, and if I saw like UFO or stuff like that would be quite exciting to me. But you're becoming old hands at this sort of thing. So, but it's still really great to hear your experiences.
Thank you, Laura.
And
It's really interesting. My mother tells, and I think I've told this on one other show, but my mother tells of a story where my great grandmother, her grandmother, and she was there as a little girl, about 5, was living in a hogan, and the hogan sat down off a kind of a hill plateau kind of thing, and they thought her uncle was coming down in the car, and the headlights were coming towards them, and she was getting excited. I get to see my uncle and jump up and down. All of a sudden, the headlights go in different directions. And mom said that the medicine men would call in ceremonies, would call in the orbs, and they regard them as ancestors. And so when the orbs would show up, and these were orbs, and she said, we thought maybe that was my uncle. In from a long time ago, I mean, she said it's, cajoling, but the point is, the relatives did come to visit. That's how they look. Navajos look at it, that they come to visit and bestow blessings on the people.
And who are we to contradict that?
Yeah, exactly.
True.
Exactly. From a Native
Y-
American
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah, yeah,
My
yeah, exactly.
mother, when she was a little girl growing up in rural Oklahoma,
Uh-huh.
the her father run a country store that served the Cherokee people out in the rural area, and
Mhm.
he would make a trip ever so often to go in to get supplies in town in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, which is the capital of Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma. And so the family would all get loaded up in the truck, and kids in the back of the truck, and they would go get supplies, and they were coming back late in the evening one evening, and my mother said that all of a sudden her dad started slowing down, and there was an orb that was like the size of a basketball that was at the top of this one lone tree that was out in the middle of this field. And that's at a time when there wasn't any rural lighting, lamps, street lamps
Mhm.
or anything like that at that time. There was no electricity run, at that time when she was a little girl. So he stopped, and they were all watching this light, watching this orb. And finally, he gets out of the truck and he crosses down into the field, and he goes out to near the base of that tall single tree, tall tree. And as he would get near the base of the tree, the light would fade out and it would disappear. And then he would start walking back toward the truck, and then it would light back up again. And she said this was the light that it produced was very intense, and very intense orange based color. And so that occurred several times, and finally he gets back in the truck and they continue on toward the house, but they never knew, the source of why that phenomenon occurred. And it's similar to, John and I had a case where there was an elderly Navajo man that had these four entities that approached his home, and they were curious with these solar lamps, and these little beings, these little grays, would get crowd around down near the solar lamp, and the solar lamp would go out, the light would go out, and then when they would back off, it would light up again, and then back and forth, that kind of same interesting thing. So anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up.
If we were going to scientifically prove why these entities show up, like right after, I think I've said this on another podcast. We were filming in Santa Fe, New Mexico, over there at Las Vegas, New Mexico, and then driving back after we dropped off the producers at the airport, and thinking it was what is it, street lamp, and all of a sudden it leaves the post
Right.
and it
Yeah.
bounces right in front of us in the car. you
Yeah.
know but you do get in habits where you see all these things, there's a photo, not think I have to take a photo and oh ooh ah.
Yeah.
You go, oh, okay, there's another experience, here we go, because we had just been filming. So we've got to be really aware and take every case that comes up very serious, possibly captured on.
Yeah.
We never know what we'll capture.
We were
True.
at Contact in the Desert,
Hmm.
and me and Stan got invited to they call it a wrap party, RAP, meaning
Hmm.
wrapping up filming. And for this group that I had been out with, and one of the producers was there and says, "Come on over." And while we were there, um, these two young girls came up to me, and one of them says, I've got to meet you. Your aura is so intense that I have to talk to you. And so it's okay, whatever. And they says, can we interview you outside? Me and my girlfriend out here in the front with, she's using her cell phone camera, just handheld. And as she's talking and asking me questions, she suddenly said, "Oh my God." And I'm standing there going, okay, what happened? Did an accident occur on the highway behind me? Is there a streaker running by? What? And she said that there was a beam of light that came down behind me and just, hit the ground behind me, but it was, uh, over, behind me directly from the camera. And then it disappeared. And then after a little while, she said, an orb just went over. And,
Hmm.
and she said it was pretty low and small, but it flew by. And I just kind of played it off and said, okay, whatever. And because I don't want to ruin the shot for them and, be, like, oh, where, So I just stayed still and says, yeah, that stuff happens to me all the time. And then another one went over, and they're both saying, "I wonder if we got it on video, or it might have been a little higher than what the camera was shooting." But after that, it was like I was the golden child. They're just completely amazed after that, and I was like, "Yeah, happens to me all the time. No biggie." Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Familiarity
John
there.
and I, John and I were on an expedition with an individual recently where we were out at Canyon de Chelly, which is in the heart of the Navajo Reservation. And we were walking back from this one viewpoint, and I almost got clipped by by a golf ball sized orb that comes zipping through there. It was pretty interesting, but
That's
it
really cool.
happens. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and
Really cool.
and and finally, because I know we're running out of time, um, the last episode that I was on Beyond Skinwalker Ranch that happened at the end of June, um, we were out at a place called Rock Art Ranch, me and Art Hardy. And during that time, I'm going to give you a little behind the scenes stuff here. We saw orbs. Now they have these DAT processors. What they do is that anything that moves in the air, it records and locks onto it and tracks it. And so they had one at the bottom of the canyon, and they put another one up on the rim, which was about 60 feet higher. And these things were recording. And as soon as Art finished a ceremonial song and he blew a bone whistle,
Hmm.
the DAT went off and they saw an orb
Hmm.
fly over. Now, the interesting thing about that is that the camera at the bottom of the canyon picked it up, but the camera at the top didn't pick it up. So, what they've determined is that that orb had to be in the canyon, not way up in the sky. And that just blew their minds. Now, the thing that they didn't show was that me and Art were standing there talking to the producers and the crew. And right between us, Art standing over to my side, and right between us, a golf ball sized orb, white orb, flew between our heads. And both of us saw it and turned and looked. And we both at the same time said, "Did you see that?" And nobody else on the crew that was with us saw anything,
Right.
but we saw it. And so, and then there were other things going on down in the canyon. So there was lots of stuff going on. And the best line out of that show was Eric saying, "I am determined to be caught red handed in the act of learning." And, and, Travis is over there going, I agree. Travis during that episode was speechless. He didn't know what to say, and Art's over there going, well, what do you expect? This is what you brought us out here for. Um, and in answer to one of your questions, um, and yes, it was by the water. There was a creek running through there. Um, in answer to the question that was posted earlier, do we wear any protective equipment? No, we don't. We wear basically BDUs, battle dress equipment, like military type shirts or police type shirts and pants, boots, or high speed, low drag tennis shoes. Um, if you were to put protective equipment on, uh, believe me, you'd heat up in no time. And if you put on a gas mask or even a partial breather, like a half mask, um, those things get hot and they get really uncomfortable. And if both of us have been trained in hazmat, and if you have to wear a hazmat suit or Tyvek, it gets warm in there. And within just a short time, you're gonna be stripping it off, and you're gonna be sweating. If you're wearing any type of gas mask, believe me, unless there's gas out there, you're not going to put it on, because after a while you're going to be suffocating in there on a good hot day. So yeah, we don't wear any protective equipment, but we've been around radiation before. We've been around hantavirus, uh, just you name it, environmentally and naturally occurring anthrax, botulism, um, just so many different kinds of stuff that's out there, even from the rat droppings and everything else. And we operate in these environments, so we're very aware of that kind of stuff. And then we're trained in hazmat itself, so we're very aware of gases and things like that. So you know, and believe me, you can't keep your phone cool. Sometimes you have to put it away and keep it in your backpack or something. Because if it overheats, you're not calling anybody. But if you're up the canyon, there's no communication anyway. So we understand now why the natives use smoke signals.
Yeah, no kidding. This is one more shot I'd like to show. Compliments of our friend Tom. We hope to have him on a future show. He's got some health issues he's dealing with today. These, like, I think was one of the orbs. Um, I tried to download a video that showed that he had an orb on a YouTube channel, and then it turned into aircraft. It was really interesting to see that. But this kind of reminds me of what Stan talked about, the orangey type phenomena. So, but I appreciate everybody being on the show today, and it was very informative. And as always, and we hope that any last words, any last comments before we leave.
I just want to say thank you to everybody that joined us. Thank you for joining us on these podcasts, and thank you for the questions and stuff you submit. It's appreciated.
Yeah, again, thank you to all you guys. You are what makes us, and your interest in this field. We're just relating experiences that we had, and um, it's it's just, to me, it's always interesting that people actually want to hear me flap my lips, because I don't think I have anything that interesting to say. But thank you for your interest.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks everybody who's tuned in, past, present, and future. And like to thank the Paranormal Rangers as well. They've always got so much, to share with us. And one little thought is, I wonder if Sasquatch sits round talking about the humans they've spotted or the evidence. Humans
That's
in the
right.
same way we do with them.
You should have seen the stupid people I saw today.
Yes. I saw one
You
of
never
their
know.
You never know, which
You never
which
know.
kind of makes it fun thinking about that as well. And also to say, the Paranormal Rangers have a YouTube channel, so please like and subscribe. And they have a Facebook page and a membership. So my apologies for all the movement behind me.
Oh
You might
yeah,
recognize
I was going to say you have movers today.
Dale.
Hi, Dale.
As long as you're not being evicted, right?
They've been putting some IKEA. IKEA is a company, a Swedish company. We have a lot
Yeah.
of their furniture over here, yeah. And I've had a chest of drawers that has been in the garage for ages, and finally I've got some guys who are putting it together for me because I can't do it. So
Well,
that's why Dale's not on the show.
as long as they're not robbers and they're taking all.
Oh, that would be the day, wouldn't it?
So we will be back next week. Yes, Michelle.
Yes.
Same time. Yeah,
Same
I'm
time
not
next
sure
week,
whether
right.
we're still doing Bigfoot, but we'll sort out. Maybe we can get Tom back on if he's up for it, or
Yeah.
somebody else.
Well,
But
we're
as
wishing you
always,
the best of health, Tom.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
think this is Bigfoot or Sasquatch month, isn't it?
It is. We've got
It is.
Okay.
one more show, and then we'll go on talking about other events and things.
There's always there's so much in the paranormal, isn't there? There's so much, as much in the unseen as there is in the seen.
right.
True.
For us to discover. Yes, so wonderful. Thanks everybody so much.
Thank you, guys.